Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Mind the Mental Monday. Welcome to yet another episode of Mind the Mental Monday. I hope that you have had a great week. I hope that you were able to break free of something in this last week. I hope that you have been able to think about your mental well-being. And as you're thinking about your mental well-being, if there are things that you know that you need to address, that you take the time to address them and that you take the time to intentionally navigate them. One of the things that we talk about often on this broadcast is the need for it to be intentional about the things that we do to manage our mental health, to be in the best mental health state that we can be. And so I hope that each of you has been able to get some nuggets from Mind the Mental Monday, that you're able to not only gain some insight, but that you're able to then apply those insights to your life. So um, let's do our check-in. How you doing? Where are you tonight on a scale of 1 to 10? One being not good at all, and 10 being I'm doing great. Where are you on that scale tonight? And where would you like to be? And are you okay with where you are, wherever that is? And if you're not, what are you going to do to shift to something that you would, to a place that you would rather be? And how are you going to do that with intentionality? So, as people are joining and tuning in, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support of Mind the Mental Monday. Thank you to those of you who have subscribed to the YouTube page and have been going back and looking at the replays and commenting and so forth. I really do appreciate that. It really does make a difference. So if you have not done so, please go over and sign up. My the link is in my bio to directly to my YouTube page. So go to the link in my bio and sign up, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and not only subscribe, but also comment, share, like the page. It all helps with the algorithms, and it doesn't cost you anything. It just helps me out a great deal. All right. So I appreciate you for what you do, for sharing, and for all that you do to help keep Mind the Mental Mondays afloat. All right. So just starting with a deep breath. Tonight, we are going to talk about um, breaking free from destructive cycles. Now, last week we talked about breaking free from approval addiction. And I have to say that actually was one of my favorite episodes. And so I hope that you, if you didn't see it, see it in its entirety, I hope that you check it out. I hope that you're seeing the reel, which is just a nugget from it that's going around that actually was freeing for me. And I hope that it's freeing for others as well. But this week, we're going to talk about breaking free from destructive cycles. And I have to give credit where credit is due. And so the amazing team that I have, one of our team members, Minister Ebony, came up with this topic. I was like, well, what's something that we should talk about? And she said, how about talking about cycles? Um, and so I've been kind of thinking about that topic since she mentioned it, and I said, that actually is a good topic of discussion because I think that most of us, probably all humans, have at some point in time or another found ourselves in cycles of behavior. And it could be good. It's not always bad. But more often than not, we find ourselves in destructive cycles. And so, so what is a cycle? A cycle is just a behavior of repeated patterns that kind of repeat themselves over and over and over again, patterns of actions, patterns of thoughts, emotional responses that we fall into. And sometimes, because it's a cycle, it's kind of like time. It's, like a clock is on a 24-hour cycle, right? And it just kind of keeps going. It keeps just moving from second to minute to hour, and it just keeps going. And we really focus on the quarters of the cycle. So those quarters can represent a variety of things that so one that I can identify with that I can share with you is I have been in a cycle of um, feeling like I need to exercise more, right? So I go from I need to exercise more to um, I'm going to exercise more to let's do it to actually doing it to something happens that causes me to fall out of the pattern, and then I'm not exercising again. So I'm actually in that. I'm in just a few weeks ago, you all have heard me talking about how I had started exercise. I was exercising like every day. Um, and it wasn't necessarily like hours of exercise, but it might be some days might be 15 minutes, other days might be a half an hour, some days might be an hour, but I was at least getting in some exercise with consistency. And I felt good about it. It made me feel good mentally and emotionally. It made me feel good about myself. I had started to lose some weight, which made me feel good. And but then what happened was I ended up getting sick a couple of times, and I physically just did not feel well enough to exercise. And then once I kind of got back into that pattern of things, now I'm back into the cycle of rather than getting up a little earlier in the morning and doing those, 15, 20, 30 minutes of exercise after I meditate, what has started to happen is I've kind of reverted back to the part of the cycle where I wake up, I do my meditation, but then it's like, man, I'm still kind of sleepy. And so then I'm just going to lay back down for another, 20, 30 minutes. And then I've just fallen back into that. And so there can be, that's just one example, but there can be all kinds of cycles that we find ourselves in. And some of the cycles that we find ourselves in um, are relational cycles. We might find ourselves in relationships with people who are not the best for us, are not the best pairing for us. Um, and then, okay, we might get out of that situation and get back into another situation that's just the same as the situation that we were delivered from. It's a cycle. It's sometimes it could be generational. There are generational cycles of, people from one generation to the next, maybe um, finding themselves sort of in the same economic pattern through generations, or finding themselves in cycles of abuse throughout generations. So cycles are patterns that we might find ourselves in. And when we find ourselves in cycles, it's not unusual. I think, most people on the planet have had some kind of cycle that they found themselves in. But the point is to intentionally put yourself in a position where you are in a positive cycle, where you are engaging in positive patterns that are going to elevate you, that are going to help you in this thing called life to navigate challenges, to grow stronger mentally, to allow yourself to see that I have the resilience and the wherewithal that when these other parts, other things come along in life that tries to pull me out of a positive pattern that I'm in and go back to a destructive pattern, that I have the wherewithal, I have the mental capacity, I have the strength to do the opposite intentionally and stay on the right track. Does that mean that we're going to be perfect in that? Does that mean that we are going to never, go back to a pattern that doesn't mean us any good? Doesn't mean that. But what it does mean is that when we find ourselves doing that, that we recognize that that's what's happening. And then when we recognize that that's what's happening, we then need to make the decision and the choice that we need to get out of this negative, destructive pattern or cycle, and that we need to make a move to do something else. But you cannot make another move. You cannot do something else without first recognizing that you are in a destructive pattern or a destructive cycle, and two, making a decision with intention that I am going to break free from this. You cannot break free from anything until you make the decision to do so. Because once it takes that decision first to then take the steps necessary to break certain chains and to figure out what resources, what is it that you need in order to break free from those cycles or to break free from those chains that cause you to stay in destructive cycles. That might be, again, as I always say, finding the right licensed mental health professional that can help you through that. It might be engaging with a life coach that can hold you accountable. That's not gonna that's not gonna just pet you up all the time and say, oh, you're wonderful, you're great. But that's going to hold you accountable and say, yes, you are wonderful and you are great. And because you are wonderful and great, you can break free from this. You do not have to stay in this. And so, um, what we have to do is understand, first of all, where is this pattern coming from? And that is true for a lot of things that we go through with regard to our mental health. When especially when it's like a negative thing, like if it's a negative thing that's on repeat in our minds, we always have to try to go back to the root of that thing, of what is causing that thought or those thoughts to permeate our minds. Because if we don't go to the root cause and if we don't deal with the root, then even if we cut it off at the top, it still has roots. It's still grounded, and it's still that therefore has the ability to return. And so what we need to do is sort of work toward cutting things off at the root. So how is it that we get into destructive cycles? What are some reasons that we might get into destructive cycles? One could be early, experiences that we had in childhood. It could be that in our childhood, there were people who had influence over our lives who themselves were in destructive cycles that we witnessed. And because they had charge over us, because they were the ones who were raising us and teaching us and showing us. See, a lot of times, back in my day, parents used to have this thing of do as I say, not as I do. Well, children don't do as you say, they do as you do. Like we, as adults, we are their models. As when those of us who are parents are models for our children. And so it's not enough to say do as I say, not as I do. That goes out of the window. No, I need to take the responsibility to model for my child, or for any child that I have charge over. Maybe I didn't give birth to the child, but maybe I'm helping to raise them. Maybe I'm a mentor to them, whatever the case might be. I need to model for them the behavior that will help them to then become models of good behavior in adult life. Now, but once we reach adulthood, right? Um, 21 and over, once we become adults, it is not we can then no longer, while we might have some behaviors that stem from things that we learn in our childhood, there comes a place where we have to take responsibility for our own actions. It is no longer like we can't blame mama and daddy and them anymore, because what they did, they did. We become adults. We learn that they were human just like everybody else. Yes, they made poor choices. They may have had some missteps, but now that I am the one who is in charge of me, now I need to make a new set of choices for myself. I now need to make a new set of decisions for myself. And so I don't have to stay in the cycle that I saw my mom in. I don't have to stay in the cycle, that dad modeled for me, or whomever raised you. Like, I don't have to stay in a cycle of abuse, but it is important to make a conscious decision that I got to get out of this. I got to do better than this. I don't have to be them, because I am unapologetically, fearfully, and wonderfully me. And so early experiences are one thing that can help us, that can cause us to get into destructive cycles. I mean, cycles. Another thing that can get us into destructive cycles is emotional triggers. And so when we have strong emotions like fear, like shame, like anger, when those emotions are triggered, we tend to then fall back into patterns that perhaps provided us some kind of comfort in times before, even if what we look to for comfort is destructive. Even if what we look to for comfort in the long run is going to cause us harm. So, emotional triggers, comfort and familiarity. Um, like I was just saying, sometimes um, cycles that we find ourselves in can actually feel comfortable just because that's what we're used to, right? There's a saying, it's the devil we know as opposed to the one that we don't, right? It's the thing that we already know. It's the thing we've already, had to live through, had to experience. We're used to it. Yeah, it's painful. Yes, it's harmful. But guess what? It's what I know, and I'm just going to stay there. Um, And so that kind of cycle in comfort and familiarity, that of things that feel comfortable and familiar but are destructive to us, can be really hard to get out of. And so in those cases, again, we may want to engage somebody, a coach, a mental health, um, a licensed mental health therapist who will work well with you to help you get through that. Why is it that I am afraid to come out of this thing that feels comfortable, but I know is really and truly destroying me, literally. And in the long run, it is going to cause me more harm than good. Um, and then the other thing that causes us to get into destructive cycles is what we believe about ourselves. And this is something that we talk about on Mind the Mental Mondays a lot. And, it's just like, in the Bible, when something is like repeated several times, it means that it's important. It means that you need to really take hold of this. So I repeat this very often because I want people who watch Mind the Mental Monday to really grab hold of the notion that what you believe about yourself is so important. And our beliefs about ourselves must not come from other people and what other people have put on us, have thrown on us. It must come from within, and it must come from our Creator. It must come from the one who created us with intentionality and with purpose. That is what our beliefs about ourselves, where our beliefs should come from. But very often our beliefs from about ourselves come through somebody else's lens, somebody who has said that we're not worthy, somebody who has said, oh, your mama wasn't no good and you ain't no good either. Your daddy ain't no good and you ain't, all of those things that people might throw at us, and cause us to think negatively about ourselves, think that we're unworthy. You're not this, or try to compare you to somebody else. Yeah, you're trying to do this, but so and so is doing the same thing and they're doing it much better. Those beliefs about ourselves can cause us to go into cycles that are destructive, because the cycle might be, oh, I feel really good about myself. But now, just like we talked about last week, right? Approval addiction, man, I did that. I did a good job with that. Oh, now I'm hearing somebody say, well, it was all right. It wasn't all that. Or I ain't getting anything out of it. So we start to then hear those negative things. Now, others have said, a, a hundred positive things about whatever it is, but here come this one little naysayer, and now you're holding on for dear life to what that one person said, instead of holding on to what you know to be true, about who you really are, who you were created to be, and grabbing on to who your creator says that you are. So, beliefs about ourselves, that come from people who don't really mean us any good, and even those who say they mean us good, or who might really mean us good. I think, particularly for those of us in the African American culture, there was a time where, oh, in our families, we tease each other, and it's usually a lot of, it's negative things. It'll be negative things about our appearances or how we look or whatever the case might be. Um, but the reasoning behind it would be, well, I'm going to get you strong in here before you go out there and hear it out there, so that by the time you go out there and hear it, you will be strong and you'll be built up. We have now learned that that is not the way to build somebody up. You can't build somebody up by tearing them down. You build somebody up by meeting them where they are and speaking life into them. And thus having someone else allowing themselves to then approve of themselves and not look to be approved of through others. And so, um, so that this is just another way that we get into destructive cycles. So again, early experiences, patterns that we learn in childhood, emotional triggers that cause us to think negatively of ourselves, comfort and familiarity. We are comfortable and we've gotten used to get to the cycle that we're in, and so we're just gonna stay there. And then beliefs about ourselves. These are all ways that we get into destructive cycles. So, what are some ways now then that we manage those cycles and that we ultimately break free from those destructive cycles? Again, everything starts with intention. Everything. We must make the decision to be intentional to make a change. And then once we make the change, we must then be consistent and we must have discipline in those changes, right? And so those are the ways. Hey, Reverend Tam, good to see you tonight. Those are the ways in which that, we must first engage in breaking those chains of destructive cycles. So how do we manage them? First thing is, after those four things, is to be aware that we're in the cycle. Because if we're not aware that there's an issue, if we're not aware, it's just like people who, there are people who have addiction problems. Um, and a lot of times, people who have problems with addiction, they will not, cannot get help with it unless and until they first admit to themselves that there's a problem. And so the same thing with with being in emotionally dangerous cycles that will ultimately destroy us if we don't find a path out to a new cycle that is going to build us up and that is going to cause us to walk in confidence. And so, hey, LS Angela, good to see you here tonight. Good to see you. So we first must be aware. Sorry. Oh, sorry, guys. I had a call coming through. Oh, all right. Sorry. Had a call coming through. For those that are on Instagram. All right. I think I'm back up on Instagram, hopefully. All right. So the first thing that we must do then is to be aware that we are in a destructive cycle. So the example that I gave earlier about the cycle that I'm in around exercise, um, I am aware that this is a cycle. Like this is not something that's new. This is not something that's just started with me. There, for years, I've been in patterns of, um, I have been in patterns of either, of exercising, but then also getting out of the habit, going back to, poor patterns of behavior and repeating that. And there has to come a time, in order to get out of it, where I must say to myself, Benita, you got to get out of this. How are you going to get out? As you're aware, I'm aware now that this is what's happening. I'm aware that it is a cycle. And then so now I'm aware that I now must make the decision to get out of this cycle and to create a new pattern of behavior for myself. And once I create that new pattern, I must then have the discipline to be consistent in the pattern that is going to cause me to be in a better state of mind. It's going to have me in a better place mentally, physically, and spiritually. All right, there's a question on Facebook. Um, Avoidance can be a destructive cycle, especially. What advice could you give where avoidance triggers running away from fearing what needs to be confronted? Ooh, that's a great question. Thank you. I can't see who that's from on Facebook right now. But my team has given me the question, so thank you for including that. So, avoidance is a heavy one, and avoidance usually comes out of um, one's uh, fear of rejection. Oh, that one comes okay. Thank you for that question. That's a really great question. Fear of rejection, I think, is a key aspect of avoidance, where we are afraid to confront a situation that we know needs to be confronted, and so rather than risking being rejected by the person or the thing that we have to confront, we decide that we're just going to try to go in a different direction. We're just going to avoid it altogether. But what happens when we do that is that it stays with us. And just like I have spoken about before with my book, The Scream Within, um, when we avoid, what we end up doing is screaming within. That means we end up holding in things that are causing us pain, it's causing us anxiety, causing us anger. And what happens is if we continue in that pattern, it's gonna come one way or another. It's either going to explode, or you're going to implode, meaning you're going to cause harm to yourself. You're going to cause health issues to yourself. High blood pressure and different things. Your eating habits might change, and because you're eating for comfort, and now that's causing other issues. And so, for someone who where avoidance causes or triggers them to sort of run away um, from what needs to be confronted, just like everything else, examine, okay, where is this fear of confrontation coming from? And examine what's the worst thing that could happen. If I confront this head on, what is the worst thing? What is the absolute worst thing that can happen? And then if the worst thing happens, how, what tools do I have in my toolkit to help me navigate that thing? So if, okay, maybe this might cause me to lose a friend or somebody who is close to me. This might cause me to lose a relationship. It might, and what am I going to do if that happens? Well, examine yourself and examine, well, if if by me being honest with this person who is my friend, who is my confidant, who is supposed to love me, if that being honest with them causes them to want out of the relationship completely, then we have to examine, was that a real relationship to begin with? And while it may be painful, and while it may cause some anxiety initially, when we confront the things that we need to confront, when we finally let that out, it is the most freeing thing, even if it causes you a loss of a relationship. It can free you, because now this thing that has been weighting you down, this thing that you've been ruminating on, that you've been thinking on over and over and over again, this thing that has locked you up in chains and twisted you up, now that you've gotten it out, now that you've confronted it head on, now you are free to then walk out and navigate. Okay, that now that I've gotten through that, now I can move to and really deal with maybe other things that are impacting me, or maybe this is a cycle that now is broken, And now I'm free to walk in a new cycle. I'm free to walk in a new pattern. I'm free to now do other things. I'm free to confront. Now that I know that I have the capacity and the ability within me to confront things head on, well, now I can confront everything. I now know that I have the ability to do this. It might be something you didn't realize you had the ability to do before, but now that you've actually confronted it, now that you've actually done it, you've done it once before. Now you know that you have it within you to do it again. Um, Uh, another person on Facebook says, recognizing that you are repeating cycles because if you are to stop them, it allows the doors of loneliness, pain, hurt, disappointment, rejection, abandonment, and so forth to occur. So rather than face these areas, you stay on the roller coaster. And that's right. And that's what this is about. You stay in that cycle because you are, as we spoke about before, because of the familiarity of being in a cycle with something or someone that is causing you harm. But once we decide to confront the bully, whatever your bully is, one thing that I've learned about bullies is that once you confront them, once you stand up to them, once you don't back down from them, and once you let them know that you know what, if we fight, even if I lose the fight, at least I've stood up to you. And guess what? I'm going to stand up to you again. Once you stand up to it, once you stand toe to toe to that thing that is causing you to stay in a destructive cycle, then again, once you have broken it once, you can break it again. Now you realize the power that you have within. Now, am I saying that that's easy to do? No, it's not easy. What I am saying is that you can have the capacity to do it. You can, you can do it. And guess what? If you lose a relationship over confronting something that is causing you harm, then when you get into your new cycle, guess what? It's going to attract real friends. It's going to attract people in your life that mean you well. It's going to attract people that you can be honest with. It's going to attract people that you can tell them the truth and you can hear the truth from them because you know that when they tell you the truth about yourself, it's not to hurt you or harm you. Just like a couple weeks ago, I talked about my friend that was just like, okay, Benita, you need to let that go. She was saying it. I knew she wasn't saying it from a place of putting me down. She was saying it from a place of building me up. She was saying it from a place of, Benita, not only do you need to let that go, you can let it go. You have the capacity and the power within you to let it go. Is it easy? No. Sometimes it takes years to get to that growth, to get to that place, but you can grow to a place where you have the ability to break cycles. And guess what? For some of us, that means we're not only breaking the cycle for ourselves, that means we're breaking a cycle for generations to come. That means when we've broken the cycle for ourselves and we're modeling the breaking of that cycle to our children, now we've broken the cycle for the next generation. And now that generation is going to model that same thing for the next generation to come. So now we have broken the cycle for generations to come. So when we engage in these kinds of behaviors, when we engage in the hard work of breaking destructive cycles, we must recognize that we are not only breaking cycles for us. It's not all about us, but it's about us. It's about our children. It's about our children's children. And for me as a grandmother now, this kind of thing speaks so loudly to me because I want my granddaughters to grow up being fully confident in who they were authentically created to be. Someone says trusting on Facebook, trusting the people that are closest to you that notice your destructive behavior can be a way of helping you acknowledge the behavior. And that is so true. And that's where, as I've talked about before, everybody needs to find their tribe. And sometimes some people might have a large tribe, but some people might have a tribe that's only a tribe of one. But find that one person that you can just be real with, that you can be vulnerable with, that you can be true with. That person who notices you, that person who sees you. And I want to encourage all of you to also be that person. Be that person who sees your brother or sister in distress and who recognizes when they are engaging in destructive behavior and confront them about it. Not in a harmful way, but in out of love to say, listen, I've noticed these changes in you and I'm concerned. How can how can I help? In sometimes it's not a matter of doing something necessarily. Sometimes the way you can help is just by listening, not telling them what they need to do, not saying to them, "Oh, I know exactly what you're going through." No, you do not. Even if you've gone through something similar, you have no idea what that person is going through. You can't. Sometimes that person don't even really fully understand what it is they're going through. So how could you? But what you can do is be that listening ear that allows them to just get out what they're going through. And then you can also ride with them on the journey and as they are developing ways to navigate what they're going through, how to get from out of this destructive cycle into a positive cycle, you can be there for support. You can be there for moral support, but you don't have to have all the answers. I might need to say that again because I think that sometimes people mean well and want to be helpful, and there's some people who just feel like they have all the answers, and none of us has all the answers. But we don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to have any answers. All we really need to do is be present. I did an episode called Presence with a C over presence around the holidays because, a lot of times we feel like we're helping somebody by giving them a whole lot of unasked for advice, unsolicited advice. That's the word I was looking for. Unasked for. Unsolicited advice or giving them gifts or whatever it is when really all they want is your presence. They just need you to be, and that's it. So, all right. So, how do we manage to navigate? So, the first thing was awareness. We talked about that. We talked about being aware. Once you're aware, pause and reflect. Think about, where is this coming from? Like, why do I find myself just staying in this same cycle? And it can really be something that you know, and that there are cycles of behavior that I have found myself in where I'm constantly praying to the Lord, like, Lord, why do I keep going back to this? Even after I've been freed from it. and could be freed from it for a period of time, finding myself right back. And it's like, why? Why am I going back to this? And I have to just examine, okay, what is happening? In those times that I find myself going back into a destructive cycle, one that I have been freed from before, but now I'm finding myself back to it. Okay, maybe journal. Okay, this is this is what's happening in my life at the time that I am re-entering this cycle. Because if at every time you re-enter this cycle, you find that your life transitions are happening, now you understand, oh, so when these kinds of things happen in my life, it triggers me to go back to the familiar, go back to the comfort, and go back to a cycle that I know is doesn't really mean me any good, but yet it's comfortable. So awareness, pause and reflect. Take the time to just sit and reflect. Just sit in it for a minute and really think about what is really happening in these times that I find myself keep going back into these cycles, keep going back to these same types of relationships, keep going back, to the same feelings that I had about my job, my whatever whatever the case might be. Um, and then challenge the story. Right? So a lot of times, as we talked about earlier, you talked about what makes us get into destructive cycles. A lot of times it's experiences that happen early in our lives. And so what is the story that you have kept telling yourself over and over and over again that allows you to stay in a destructive cycle? And now, why do you keep telling yourself that story, and how are you going to change the story? I did a talk recently, a couple of weeks ago, on, rewriting the song in your head, and which I will do again. So, and that had a lot to do with, changing the narrative. Somebody maybe, you're looking at the narrative, you're living through the narrative that somebody else spoke over you, rather than living the narrative that your creator created you to live. You are staying in somebody else's narrative without understanding that you have the power within, with the help of your creator, to rewrite the narrative. You don't have to stay stuck in a narrative that was written and designed by somebody else. And sometimes that somebody else might be a parent. That might be somebody who raised you. That might be somebody who said some destructive words to you. But you have to get to a place where you have made up in your mind, you have decided, I am no longer going to live by the narrative that somebody else wrote for me. I'm singing a new song. I'm writing a new lyric. I'm writing a new narrative. And that narrative is going to be the one that my creator wrote as he knew me before placing me in the womb. But it takes work. It takes action to get to that place where you are bold enough and strong enough to say, I can do this, and then to not only say you can do it, but to do it, to act on it. So identify new choices. That's a part of writing a new narrative. That's a part of exiting that destructive cycle and going into a new cycle that will help you to grow, that will help you to be the strongest version of yourself that you can be mentally, spiritually, physically. Identify new choices. Break the pattern because a cycle is a pattern. And the way and patterns are things that are repeated, right? So if you have a red block, if you have a group of red blocks and a group of blue blocks, and you put red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, that is a pattern, right? Um, and so sometimes you need to flip the pattern and make it blue, red, or, knock the red out altogether or knock the blue out altogether. Like it is up to you to decide the pattern that you need to engage in order to really take flight. If you've ever been on an airplane, their airplanes fly in patterns. Why do they fly in patterns? Because when one deviates from the pattern, it can cause a crash, right? But when the pattern is set and when as they're on the tarmac waiting for the planes ahead of them to take off and give a safe distance, well now you are now positioned to not only roll fast, but you're in your position now to take flight and not crash into the other planes that were ahead of you. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? Does it make sense? Are you who is that? Somebody I see you on social media says, are you picking up what I'm putting down? Um, I hope so. I hope that it is helpful. The other thing is to identify new choices. So now you have to identify for yourself what are the new choices that I need to make, and what are the new patterns that I need to set up to create a cycle that is going to be beneficial. And again, it's not only going to be beneficial to me, but it's going to be beneficial to those that I serve. It's going to be beneficial to other generations that are watching me. That is going to be for my legacy, whatever that is, right? Um, but we have to identify new choices, and it doesn't have to be a big new choice. I could make a choice. So in this ex is this example that I used of my pattern with with getting in patterns of exercising and then stopping exercising and sleeping longer. And so what can I do to kind of get out of to get out of that pattern? Am I gonna, jump up and run a marathon? No. Am I gonna go, am I gonna go jog, 5 miles when I haven't exercised in a couple in a month or two? No. I'm going to slowly get back into it. So that might mean that rather than doing 20 minutes, I might do 10 minutes in the morning and like instead of doing a whole 20 minutes at one time, I might do 10 minutes in the morning and maybe 10 minutes in the evening. That's still going to give me 20 minutes of exercise. There are ways of creating new patterns in small chunks. You don't have to do it all at once. But once you get on the path, once it becomes a pattern to exercise, once you do it consistently, once you get on that pattern, it's not going to feel right when you get off the pattern. That's why I doesn't feel right now because I had become disciplined and consistent and was feeling much better when I did. But now that I haven't, if I'm not careful, if I just keep sitting, if I just keep laying in the bed that extra 20, 30 minutes, I'm gonna create I'm gonna go back to an old pattern and I'm gonna pick that one up quicker than the exercise one because that's the one that stuck with me the longest. So it's gonna be easy for my brain to go back to that pattern. So, but I have to make the choice and I have to make the small steps to, to get back to where I was and then go beyond that. but it starts out with a choice. Support systems. Again, a tribe, whatever your tribe is, find them, find those people. It's taken me some years, So, and the thing about it is your tribe will change over time. The tribe that I had in my 20s is not the tribe that I have in my 50s. Like I have a whole new tribe right now. I mean, not that my tribe, I got some tribe members that is from my 20s that are still, they still around, but I've got some new tribe that can relate more to where I'm at in life right now, where we can support each other and we can build each other up and we can help each other press forward. And so, support systems, therapy. Yes, I just got finished a therapy session earlier tonight. Um, it helps. And again, therapy is not just for if you've got some kind of major trauma. Therapy can help with things like time management. Um, because if we don't manage our time well, then that gets us off track with things that we might have to do, and it causes us to psychologically go to a place of maybe anxiety, of maybe having panic attacks, or of maybe feeling bad about ourselves because of what we haven't accomplished. It helps us, to track what's really necessary versus what is stuff that you just doing just to say you doing stuff. Well, the stuff you're doing just to be doing stuff, you might be able to set that aside and just focus on what's the main thing. Just helps you keep the main thing, which really helps with your mental wellness. Just being able to stay on top of those kinds of things. And then have some compassion. I always say, listen, give yourself some grace. We are not perfect, right? Jesus did the perfection thing and he handled it, right? While we might be striving toward perfection, we have to recognize that we don't have to be perfect. And because if we were perfect, that means we're perfect in every area of life. That means that we're giving 100%. We're giving 100% to family, 100% to job, 100% to all the different people in your life, right? You're being 100% as mother, father, sister, auntie, uncle. Like you're giving 100%. That really is what perfection would be. You're giving 100% in all these different areas, and that's just not even real. That's just not realistic, right? And so you give yourself some grace and know that just because maybe you tried to exit the cycle, and it didn't take hold at first, and you found yourself back. Well, that doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to do it again. It just means that you have to have the desire to try and to keep trying until you get to that place where you have really fully broken free. But you can do it. You can do it. So I'm here to encourage you tonight that you can break destructive cycles. You can break them, but you must be what? You must first make the decision. Once you make that decision, you must take action on that decision. Once you take action on that decision, you must be um, disciplined with the action, and you must be consistent. And that consistency is what will carry you out of that cycle into a new one that will give you that launching pad that you need to not just fly, but to soar. So I didn't even realize that it had gotten this late already. I don't usually go this long. But so I really thank you all for tuning in and for joining in. Um, you know, oh, there were two more things I meant to say. Once you get to that, right, to that new cycle, in some cases you might have deeper wounds that you need to work through. You might need to get professional help to do that, but celebrate small victories. That's something I meant to say actually on a previous Mind the Mental Monday. We don't take time enough to celebrate the good things that we do, the small steps that we take. Celebrate. When you finally made that small step toward a new beginning, all right? Celebrate. You did that. Get in the mirror and say, I did that. And and just laugh and smile and just, celebrate yourself. Because guess what? You've earned it. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Tam. I'm glad that Reverend Tam said excellent. I needed this today. Thank you for all the I've been seeing you chiming in here on Instagram. Thank you so much for all of your comments. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad that you needed this today. Glad it was helpful to you. But I give all the glory to God for it. And so I'm grateful to God whenever He's able to use me as a vessel to send a message that can be helpful to anyone. And I love you right back. Thank you so much. All right. So again, don't forget, go subscribe to the YouTube channel. The link is in my bio to the YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, share, please, please, please. If you're blessed by any of this, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with somebody else that you think can benefit from it as well. And encourage them to subscribe to the channel and go back and, this is episode 65. I cannot believe that I'm already at episode 65. And I'm so proud of myself. I'm going to celebrate this win because I have been consistent at this for 65 episodes. I had started this sometime last year, but it was like sporadic. And then I got to a place where it's like, you know what? I'm going to be consistent. And I have been. And that's a win for me. And I'm really excited about that. So thank you all again for your presence. I appreciate you. And um Lord willing and the creek don't rise. I'll see you next Monday, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or I'll see you when I see you. If you're looking at this after the live, um, I'll see you then. But God bless you all. I love you. And you know what? There's nothing you can do about it. Peace.